of this idea of framing things in relation to other things. So it's like obviously perspective, seeing other people's points of views and understanding things, but also understanding the relative, the relation between the things and what is actually more important than other things. Because if you are doing one thing, and I had an episode about this not too long ago of faith, just in general, of having faith in something. If you have faith in something, that means you have not faith in the opposite of that. Because you just can't have both. So when you put faith in something, this is where you're putting your hope, trust, or whatever. That means you don't agree with the other part of it. But so often we want to have that one foot in, one foot out.
Yeah.
We'd be like, actually, I want this because I believe this is going to get me to where I want. However, I'm still stuck in this space, right? And we play this teeter-tottering. So perspective it definitely resonated with me this year when I was writing my words. I was writing a bunch, and like perspective just kept coming up, or synonyms of perspective. I was like, all right, that's the word. That's going to be the focus this year.
Jonathan, what is up, my friend? It has
How's
been
it going?
a long time since we have.
It has been a minute.
Yeah. I think if I remember right, the last time I saw you was like maybe a week or so before I had my seizure. Cause we had just had like a board meeting for for Hangry. Yeah. And I think like, I just went dark on you guys, and it was just, and I had to come back later and go, hey, so this thing happened, and, I'm okay, but, I think I'm going to have to like unfortunately withdraw from this. And, I got a cool hoodie that I wear all the time. Every time I wear it, people are like, oh, that's funny. Like they think that like I'm hangry, like,
it's just like a funny joke. You're like, no, there's a thing behind it. Yeah. There's something else behind this.
Yeah. There's something behind, see the hashtag that you should hashtag that, and you'll see that there's more behind it. But man, I just really appreciate you coming on here with me and, being part of the community, sharing your story. I can't wait to dive into your story about like, the crazy stuff that you've accomplished and what you've been able to do. One thing that we do on here is I like to define hope with the guests, so you understand how we define hope a little different on here. Define hope as an impact point. So it's a starting point, like a ignition switch to get you started down your path. And like everybody else, you're going to start down your path, and eventually something's going to go sideways. Maybe you might fail, or you've latched onto a guru and their way didn't work for you. And a lot of times I think most people think, well, I'm a failure, or I did something wrong. And what we try to do is provide hope to let you know that no, you didn't fail. You just learned and the path moved. So maybe what we have to do is just reorient ourselves and stuff like that. So with that idea of what hope defined means there, is there a time, well, I would ask you to pick a time that you could go back in Jonathan's life and provide that version of you with hope? What would it look like? And what would you say?
Yeah, that's a deep thoughted question, because the way you're framing it makes so much sense of this perspective aspect, right? Of how do we look at this through a different lens to say, hey, let's reframe how we do this. I think when I first started getting into the corporate business world, I really started to have these identity issues of just like imposter syndrome, all of these things, right? Of like, who am I to do any of this or go through these motions? And as I started getting more positions, it started to like hit me even harder and harder. And I think eventually I learned of, hey, you're learning through this process, you're doing these things. But from the beginning, it was definitely a long road to get to this acceptance, to say, hey, to your point, you didn't fail at this. We learned a way to kind of move forward through this. And we learned a new thing. We have a new data set or a new data point that we can lean into and go, okay, now that I have this information, I can do other things with it. Right. And I think that became like the catalyst of the hangry, the running, everything from it, of really saying, no, let's learn through this. The idea of getting comfortable with discomfort, right? Of let's push through this a little more and see where this thing can take me, knowing that I have this a little bit behind me now, going, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a big, huge learning curve that people like are in those spots think that they're stuck, or like I've reached my peak, and it's interesting how many people will stay right there. Like they'll be like, no, I'm good. But then in moments of like talking to them outside of, they're like, oh man, I'm so unhappy.
Mm.
And you're gonna like, well, you could totally do, but I don't want to do that. Like it's like, it's this weird like ping pong game of, that imposter syndrome. And I mean, I know it from myself too. It's like, you just kind of go like, man, I want to do all this stuff. I don't know how to do it. So therefore I'll just stay
Right.
here because this is comfortable.
Yeah.
And as somebody that has one of the things in your bio that I think is great, and I think it's even this is a good segue into that, is that you said you're a weirdo that is getting comfortable in discomfort. I love that. Like, like I one of my big things is always talking about born to be weird, or be the weird you want to see in
Yeah.
the world. So when you ever mention the word weird around me, I'm like, oh yeah, like let's hear more about that. So tell me what that means for you. Like, I would just love to hear what your version of being comfortable in discomfort is for you.
Yeah. I think it's to the point you just mentioned before, right? Of leaning into things where it may feel like a failure, or excuse me, or something happened that you're just like, oh, maybe that didn't go as well, and I'm going to push back from it, right? I hit this point of resistance and going, oop, I'm not going to push through, because obviously hitting a little bit of discomfort. I don't know what's on the other side of this. There's all that uncertainty. Do I go through this door? Do I do these kinds of things? And with me, I learned a long time ago, I think, of just like, it doesn't always get worse. There is a chance it gets better, but you have to take that step. You have to actually cross the threshold of the door. I can't remember the name of the book, but there's this metaphor of all of these doors that we have. It's like all the places we'll go, I think is the name of the book. And there's all of these doors, and you can open the door, you can look through it, but you don't really know what that door is going to lead you unless you actually step into it. And it's uncomfortable because it's unknown and you don't know what's going to happen. And I think I've done that with so many little things in my life, right? Like, as a creative person, you mentioned of always want to do something new. I don't know how to do this thing, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to go through this whole process and do the thing. And with that, if we stopped every single time we hit a little bit of resistance, we wouldn't get anything done. And that's just the way our brains work, of just like, nope, got to keep pushing, keep doing. And I think the running aspect, running all the marathons and doing all of the races, I had to be a little bit crazy to be like, I remember I set the goal for the 50 states. I had done 5 states. And I think it was 6 races. And I said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we just did 45 more? Like that. No one says that with like any bit of sanity, I think, in a way. But it was one of those of saying, along with the getting comfortable with discomfort, of if someone says I can't, I really want to lean into that. Why can't I?
Right.
Is it because you don't want to, or you can't, and you're kind of holding yourself back, and you're trying to put that pressure on me in a way? Or is there something like, actually, no, I'm going to lean into this.
Yeah.
And we'll see where this gets me. And I think it really comes into that leaning into things and kind of asking that once more. Hey, I've done some things and I'm just like, actually, you know what? That wasn't right for me. It was discomfortable, and it was uncomfortable for a reason. And I should have realized that, but now I know.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about this half in, half out of the door, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. I think, to kind of bring everybody up to speed, like, I met you had just started Run on Purpose, your podcast, which you're in the hundreds of episodes now. I saw, like, that's amazing. Congratulations on that. And then I want to say, if I was trying to rack my brain, I think when you were in Ohio, you were maybe at 6 or 7 marathons the last, when we did your podcast. Cause I thought it was crazy, because you told me that you were doing the 50 states. And since you've completed all 50 states, which I remember when you posted, I was like, holy cow, like unreal. But, for everybody listening, John set on his quest to run a marathon in every state. I would love to hear, one, where that idea came from. I think you just alluded to it there, but like maybe the why, and what is the coolest Forrest Gump moment, like that? When he was,
I should have worn my Forrest Gump sweatshirt. That's what I should have worn. That would have been a better fit for it all. I'll circle to it. The why, my always joke is, why not?
Right.
Why not do it? Like, why not take the chance? Why not do the thing? But realistically, I got into running because I needed something that was cheaper than golf. Lived in South Florida, moved to Ohio, and I was like, I need something cheaper than golf. And then now traveling all over the world to run, it's definitely not. I would have been much better just getting a golf membership and just being at a club. But it was was a way that my wife and I, Kayla, we could connect and kind of do things together. It was like our thing. She went to all but I think 3 states,
Mm.
maybe it was 2 or 3 states, and yeah, 3 states. And so she got to travel the country with me, and we got to, many people can't even say they've been to every single state, and I can say I've ran in every single
Mm.
state. And our dog that passed away, Bella, almost a year and a half ago now, she went to most of the races as well. And it's like, our dog pooped in 38 states. Like, again, most people haven't been to 38 states. And
Right.
it was this idea really for us to do something together. I enjoyed running. And initially it was, hey, how can I get faster? I was like, I keep competing, the idea of the competition and the run with yourself. But then I started meeting people and starting hearing people's stories. And it became like an outreach for me, which is the extension of the podcast. Since I started running before this podcast. And then as I got into it, this idea of run with purpose is, hey, why are you running? Like, I'm curious on what your story is.
Mm.
And more often than not, my races, I would end up slowing down to walk with someone. It was their first time of the race. Like, hey, how's it going? Hey, I'll run with you. Come on, let's keep it. Let's walk. Let's go to the next mile. Let's do the next thing, and absolutely kill the time goals that I had. But those were my most favorite races because
Mm.
I was able to build those relationships and have community with people in a different kind of way, and lift them up. So I would say like the last like 20 races or so, which is still nuts. It was more about the relationships I could build, the people I can meet, and the places that we were going. Like I always say, I would never go to Birmingham, Alabama. Apologize for anyone from Birmingham, Alabama listening, but it's like I would have never gone there had it been not been for a race, right? Or
Right.
running absolutely miserable in Maui, just stupid hot. I'm having a horrible day. I didn't sleep well. But then you see dolphins and sea turtles right to your left. You're like, how can you be upset with this?
Yeah.
And I think the whole aspect of it really just, I don't know, it hit home as a journey that I could do with my family and bring other people along with it as well. Because I think we all have a story to tell. And a lot of times we don't think we do, or we're just not given the opportunity to share it. So it's evolved in how I've thought about running.
Yeah. That's amazing. And what is like where would you say was like the spot that took you most by surprise that you were thinking that, maybe like those moments where you just kind of get like, wow, holy cow. Like, I'll give you an example. When I go out to Breckenridge and I go up the lift for the first time, I'm always like, how do people know this exists and they don't come see it? Like,
Right.
what would be the equivalent to that of a trail that you've run, a marathon you've ran that really
Um,
sticks out?
I think it's some of the beautiful ones, the Alaska, the Hawaii, the California, like those stick out. But as far as like an overall experience, the Dakotas surprisingly were really fun races.
Hmm.
The community around it. I ran in Fargo, North Dakota, and Brookings, South Dakota, just north of Sioux Falls, and just super small little towns. But the community rallies again around this race, and like everyone came in very small, but you got to see the same people over and over again. The way the course kind of wrapped, and those types of communities really bring things together for me. I think you can get some of the pretty views, you can get the big races. Like one of my favorite races is Boston, just because of how big it was, and the opportunity to be able to run that with Team BMC as a charity runner. But some of those small town races where you're just like, this is absolutely gorgeous. The last race was actually in Stowe, Vermont, and that was just next level of blowing my mind of how beautiful it
Mm.
was up there. Also, doesn't make sense to be like, hey, your last state after you just did a couple marathons a few weeks ago, it's just gonna be like 5,000 feet elevation change. No big deal. It's fine. You live in Chicago now, where like the most I do is an overpass.
Yeah.
It's fine. Well, this should work out plenty for the training cycle. But I think like I said, towards the end of the journey, it became less about what I was getting out of it and what I could provide to others. And in that was able to see the community aspect come through and meeting really, really cool people.
Yeah. Do you feel like as you started that journey that like a mission kind of emerged, or you were looking for something? Maybe the intentions were starting out like, hey, 50 sounds good, why not? Do you feel like maybe there was something that was waiting for you to discover, and do you feel like you found it, in this process of going through that?
Yeah, that's a really good thought. My my initial answer there and thought, I'm trying to process that because it's the what's next is what everyone was saying to me afterwards,
Yeah.
right? Of like, hey, you did this, now what? And it's
Yeah.
like, first of all, are you not impressed? Like, I
No
don't know
kidding.
what else can I do to impress you because apparently what I'm doing isn't working. How do we impress you in this? But it was I think it was first of like, could I do it?
Hmm.
I had knee issues in high school. I actually stopped playing high school baseball because I had water in my knees. They're like, hey, you're never going to be able to play like an organized sport. So I
Wow.
was like, well, this sucks. I really wanted to play baseball. Like that was my dream, was to play baseball. And it's like, well, I got to figure something else out. And then all of a sudden that alleviated. And I was like, okay, I can start running. Let's try it. So it was kind of like a prove to myself I could do this. But I think through it helped me just grow as an individual and talking with people. You know, when I first started running, very introvert, still introverted in nature, but couldn't really talk to people. Couldn't really do, like, I was kind of my own little homebody thing. And through running, through meeting people, through running groups and the races, and then the podcast, and then it slowly absorbed into, hey, you can be a community minded person. You know, Hangry started as the Hangry Race series because we were trying to figure out how to put on 5Ks, and I was like, I know how to run, so let's kind of do that. It's running has built so many relationships for me, and it's kind of changed my aspect on life and how I think about things. You know, again, running with purpose and intentionality is the idea here. So it's making every step count, but making sure you're taking one step at a time, because so many people focus on the goal that they're not focused on the journey. And when that what's next conversation came up, I quickly looked back and go, yeah, I achieved this goal. But that thing, that last medal, I've got the pint glass in my cabinet right now. I couldn't tell you the last time I looked at the thing.
Right.
But the memories that I have from each one of those races, the people that I can name to be like, I remember helping them, or I remember them helping me when I was in a struggle bus. I think that aspect really just, for lack of a better way of putting it, gave me like hope in humanity
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way of just like, hey, there are some really cool people out there, and people that are really wanting to help each other get through things. And especially like in just the darkness of sometimes we see with news and all of that stuff, like being able to see those lights in the
Yeah.
world. That's why I love like your little cards and stuff. Like when I see you post those things, I'm
Yeah.
just like, that is so cool. Like the changing someone's day
Hmm.
just with like positive encouragement, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine like on the race during a marathon, I could imagine you're coming across people that, being a heart led person like you are, that are struggling, you recognize it. Maybe at the beginning it was like, no shit, I got to get this marathon done.
Right, right.
But then as you start going like, wait a minute, the goal wasn't finishing it fast, it's to hit all 50 states. And then the perspective might have changed, whether subconsciously or consciously, where you started seeing those people and you started maybe seeing a version of you
Yeah.
that was there before. And I wonder if that opened up the doors for those relationships you're talking about, and ultimately like where you were able to find hangry and lead to helping people in a different way. I think it's really interesting that the perspective of you know I think most people, like most average people, not like those people that run the marathons in like 2 hours or whatever, but
Yeah, yeah.
the average person sets out to go, I just want to be able to say I did it once.
Yeah.
Right. And I could imagine like you've met lots of people along those way, but what is probably interesting in perspective you get, unlike most people, is their purpose for doing it, because you get them at their vulnerable spots where they want to
Mm,
quit. And
yeah.
I'm just curious, like if there any of those that really stick out, of spots where you're like, man, that not only did it touch me in the moment, but I've added that to my toolbox for my own life.
Yeah. There's been a handful of people that I've just had the opportunity to interact with. The last one was in Maine. There was a lady doing her first race, and she had some spinal issues, some genetic thing, and it was really flaring up, and it was really causing her issues. And I ended up running like an hour slower than I wanted to because I hung out with her. But just hearing stories and seeing what she's going through, right? Like, yeah, I have some ache and pains, but like, no, she has to deal with this every day.
Mm,
Like, she has something that she's having to go through every day that I, I'm so thankful that I don't. But the aspect of, hey, she can do this.
mm,
She's strong. Like, how do I get that mental toughness to push through when you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? I just want to quit. I want to do this. And you're like, no, no, no. We gotta power through. And it's funny in the running aspect of all the people that I've met, there's always somebody that's running more than you. It's really anything in life, right? There's always someone doing better or doing more than you are relative to it, because you're always looking for that person, whether you realize it or not. And I have friends that have run 200-mile races, 96 hours circling Lake Tahoe. And you're just like, it's an animal, an absolute animal. And it's like, oh, I couldn't do that, or I couldn't have that. And how does he get through that perseverance? How does he do these things? And when we frame it that way, we can realize that everyone has their thing that they have to do, especially with running and having a family and being able to travel and do all these things and still being able to work. I'm kind of getting off topic there, but the idea of circling to having the people that have interacted with me during these races to really say, hey, their story has impacted me just talking to them. And again, talking to them during the race. And sometimes I'll just look at the hashtag of the race after the race and then scroll through their Instagram and be like, hey, do you have a cool story? Like, what's your background? What's your whatever? And just really try to learn things about people, because people's stories really resonate with me, because a lot of runners started this thing of, hey, I started running, to your point, just wanted to do it once.
Yeah.
I wanted to run one marathon. I wanted to run a half marathon, wanted to run a 5K, whatever it is. And next thing you know, you're like literally traveling across the world to run. And it's like, well, what got you there?
Yeah.
What made you tick to get to that point? And I think it's, I don't know, it's the perseverance through it all and the perspective change, right? Like we all have our own circumstances, but we're still able to get this done.
Yeah. Have you thought about doing a book or some sort of TED talk or something like based around what you learned on this? Because it seems like you've had conversations that most people wouldn't be privy to with a lot of people. Yeah. And it would be really cool to like capture that in a way. Because how I resonate a lot with that is you're a storyteller, you know, and you're looking for that story. And, you know, that's for me, I resonate with that so much because along the same lines, like I love hearing, you know, I always joke around on here about like, I want to be the best anti-guru. Like I don't want to tell people how to do anything. It's just like you do it by doing it, but it truly comes from shared stories, you know, and seeing that somebody else has been there. And, you know, like to your point, like being willing to run something an hour later because that person just needs like somebody to just see them, you know, because maybe they're struggling with stuff. And there is, I mean, I could imagine the amount of humanity. I've never really thought of it that way, from that standpoint. But, and you mentioned hangry coming out of that too. And, you know, I want to make sure everybody is well aware of what you're doing, not only in marathons, but what you're doing outside, to help other people with that. If maybe you can tell us a little bit.
Time. Yeah. Lots of free time.
Yeah. You don't do anything. So that's all good.
Not at all.
Tell us a little about hangry and like how people get involved. Yeah.
I was telling my co-manager literally before we started recording, I was just like, yeah, he's like, I got up at 5 and I was recording videos at 5:45 because I have like, I'm heading out of town here soon. I was like, I got to get these videos recorded. So I'm like in the living room at 5:45. So anyone's listening to this, you saw those videos, those happened pre 6 a.m. The lights, the whole nine. So it was I got plenty of free time.
Yeah.
Plenty of free time.
Yeah. You didn't do anything at all. Like, yeah. You mean check emails, record, and do a podcast? You're doing it right now. You're doing it with your toes right now, right?
Yeah. I've got, this is why the hands have to stay low, because they're actually doing something else now. But no, you bring up a good point with this, the empathy and the humanity aspect that comes along with that, right? Is when we see people where they're at and say, hey, it's not about me. How can I support you? And I think you're a really great example of that, is this everything that you've gone through. It's so easy to play like almost a pity poor me type of card and saying, you know, this is the hand that I was dealt. This is what I'm going through. But you've turned it to even more positivity, right? I'll have to show it to you before we finish recording. On my podcast box, I still have the unicorn sticker, the kindness sticker. It's still sitting there. And it's a reminder of just like, this is how we should live. And this is how we should do things. And it's like your impact and your positivity makes the world of difference to people. The amount of things that I've shared. I remember even during COVID when you were doing the drawing classes for kids and stuff like that. Like I was doing that in my the pizza man was one of my favorite ones that I would draw in meetings when they were just boring meetings. I was like, I'm gonna draw this pizza guy that Jason taught me.
Yeah.
But it's this positivity that we can turn the situations that we're in, and how do we embrace it, right? So if I'm having a shitty run and things are going that way, how do I see the light in it, right? Like, how do I turn this into fun? Maybe I'm just high-fiving volunteers. Maybe I'm doing whatever. I've had a few races where towards the end of it, they're like, they're hanging out at their house or doing whatever. Actually, it was just in New Hampshire. This one happened. A bunch of guys, mile 24, having a good race, starting to fade a little bit. And I was like, we're just going to take it easy. We're going to make it happen. But I was like, I need some more carbs. Like, I can't get these gels down. Something's not working. Bunch of guys partying. I'm like, hey, you guys got beer? I'm like, yeah, beer. And I'm like, no, can I have one? I'm like, sure. So I start walking over there like, no, you keep running. We're going to send someone to you. And this guy's like running down the street with his beer. So obviously it's like completely shaken up at this point. And it's a pumpkin ale. I don't like pumpkin. But literally I just crack it and I like cheers the guys or whatever. And then because of that, it's like, hey, in a dark-ish spot of me not feeling well, I need to get out of it. At the end of the race, we took a detour and drove back to these people, and I just thanked them.
Yeah.
Like, you don't realize what you did
right.
to just lift me up in that moment. And I think that's what I want to be for people in those moments.
That's a great way to illustrate, the idea of, just seeing people. I think, it is such a great way to like illustrate. So many of us are going through life right now with this invisibility cloak. Like we feel like nobody can understand, nobody can see me, all those things like that. But I always wonder, like, I can't be the only one that feels the urge to do something like that. But I do feel like I might be one of the few that actually will act on that urge.
Yeah.
And I think that I wish that I could give people that little, you could sprinkle that little magic that says that, like, no. If you act on it, you'll actually feel better about all the other stuff. And it's so hard because I think we've almost been programmed to like not give a shit about people. Like it's become this weird like thing. And just the simple thing of, they didn't want to disrupt, you're asking them for something, but they didn't want to disrupt what you were doing. So they disrupted their world to help you get to where you want to go. So good. And I think that there's so many of us that don't realize that there's a lot of those people out there in the world like that, but we're so focused on the wrong people, the wrong things. And, I heard a quote the other day. It was like, 99% of the people that you are worried about are too busy judging themselves to give a shit about you. And it's like, good. It's 100% true. Like, everybody's out there worried about their own stuff. And I love that, like, how something like running translates the same way as me leaving a card for somebody, or, and it even probably more so, because I think so many people, when it comes to a physical challenge, it's so damn scary. Cause first off, I think of running a marathon and I'm like, I could think about a million things I'd rather do. I think I told you about originally back on your podcast. Like I could think about a million things I'd rather do than run one marathon, let alone 50 in different states. But it is awesome, and kudos to you for completing that. And it was awesome to like see all those photos when you would complete one. And I was definitely cheering you on from the sidelines. And I got cold chills when I saw you post about the last one, as I'm sure you did as well. And I'm sure that had to be, once you finished it, like an emotional release of some sort, right? Where
it was I was an absolute wreck. And there's a lot of reasons why. So I think I've showed you the tattoo.
Yes.
We got a tattoo. We had tattoos of Bella, and the whole thing, right? Like, I was supposed to finish the races early because of COVID. A year before I finished, Bella had passed, and it was a sudden thing, right? Like, she had a seizure on Monday, and by the next Sunday, we had to she wasn't with us anymore. And it was just this wreck, just absolutely wrecked us because of just the speed of it. And it really just puts things in perspective, right? These kind of things, that we don't have kids. She was our daughter in a way. And it was just something else that, it's just hard to explain. People that have had loss, they understand that. And with it, it was just emotional. Like, hey, I've got to do these races still. I had 7 or 8 states still, 7 states. I did 7 states the last year because why not? And I remember the first race that I did after it was, I did Disney, I had already done Disney before. It was just a random race. I finished the finish line. Kayla wasn't there. So it was a little upsetting just in general. But then the first new state I did was in Arizona. And like, I'm bawling towards the finish line. And I'm not even, this is still, I've got 6 races left.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is going to be rough. So 50 comes along. It's our wedding anniversary.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
it's the day before her 1-year anniversary
Oh my God.
of passing. And we got these done. Well, Kayla got hers done on the 1 year and I got it done the next day in New York. But it was literally like, so everything, it's the 50th state. I got 2 of my really good running buddies with me, Josh and Chad. They made the trip out to come run this last race with me. I'm hurting because 2 weeks before I ran back-to-back marathons. I ran a Saturday and ran a Sunday in New Hampshire and Maine.
God.
So I'm hurting already. Everything's just there. And I remember getting to the starting line, about to start it, and I just start walking away. And my buddy's like, hey, let's take a picture. Like, what's going on? And they're like, he needs a moment. I'm like, yes, I do. And it was just like a reflection at the beginning. And you're just like, this is nuts. And the last half a mile, my buddy Josh was with me and he goes, hey, do you want to just run this in by yourself? I was like, yeah, if you don't mind going ahead, like, I just want to kind of I just want to be here for a moment by myself, 6.5 hours in the woods. And then I just want to come to the finish. And as I was coming in, hearing the cheers, hearing the thing, and it's just like absolutely lost it. And I had the picture still pinned on my Instagram of just Kayla and I hugging each other, and just like, I'm getting emotional now with it. Just the emotions that are all around it of the journey that took 10 years that, we didn't have Bella with us to the finish. And then again, a wedding anniversary and everything going on with it.
Yeah.
It's just this weird kind of experience. And I think that's where, when I hear the what's next, and you brought this idea of like writing a book or talking about it. And I have had these ideas to tell a little bit of the stories, but really for this motivation, like you said, of, hey, most of the time I was just trying to be a good person.
Right.
I was just trying to like see what I could do to help out. I tried to, every race I did, I wanted it to support something. I didn't want it just to support an organization. And if it did, I tried to raise money for a charity to do that. I'm doing the Chicago Marathon this year, and I'm running for Team World Vision. Same kind of thing of like, I want to raise money and use this for good. Like,
right.
God gave me this ability to run. It shouldn't be for me.
Right.
How do I give this away? And I think if more people had that mentality, like you had stated, is instead of focusing so much on ourselves, let's look at our gifts and talents and how can we bless somebody else with that? You may not be a millionaire. You may not have all these funds or things to give away, but you can give someone a smile. You can give somebody a card.
Yeah.
You can send them a text. How you doing? A new thing that I'm doing this year is I'm writing letters to friends.
Yeah.
Handwritten letters. Just be like, hey, just thinking about you.
Yeah.
Hope all is well.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm picturing the joy people are getting when they open. Well, first the confusion of what the hell are you writing me a letter for?
Right.
You can just send me a
what
text
is this
message.
thing? This is handwriting. I don't know how to. I don't read this.
This is so weird. I don't like. I had to find paper. I don't even have paper in the house anymore.
They're calling you like, "Hey, John, are you okay? Did you get a medical diagnosis? Like, what's going on?" Like,
we need to talk. We're gonna have an intervention on what's going on here? But with it, it's like I'm thinking about the impact that it would make on someone if I got a letter like that, right?
Yeah.
And was reading and be like, I haven't talked to the first person I wrote a letter to, I haven't talked to really in 6 years. Or 5 or 6 years. And it's just like, how you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what happened with us. I apologize for the part I played in and stuff, but I just thinking about you, man.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think that simple act, if we would just do something that simple of however much stamps are now, 55 cents or whatever, they're expensive now. Send a text message, write a letter, do something, put yourself out there. Is it uncomfortable to know I'm writing a letter and I don't get a read receipt on this?
Right.
They could throw it in the trash. And I'm running that risk that I may never hear back from this or see the fruits of my labor in a way, but I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because I believe it's the right thing to do to try to put a smile on someone's face.
Right. Yeah. I think I love that whole thing. Cause one of the things that I realized, I think through the diagnosis process, was the role that you play in somebody's world isn't my job to fix anymore, but I can make it right for what role I played in it. Right. And I can learn how to forgive myself for it. I can learn to, figure out like, how do I let it be okay? right?
Yeah.
And, one of my practices that I do when I meditate is I thank myself for protecting me for as long as I did, because I think I was trying to just survive me,
Mm.
right? But the true evolution started coming when I started to, uh, oddly enough, write letters to myself. Where I started, and I really did. I was writing letters to myself, which turned into me asking myself to let me go, right? And
Mm.
it
So
it
good.
is that idea of like, you can't control what everybody else does, but you can control what you do. And
That's
if you're
right.
trying to do stuff with good intentions, there's like, to your point, that person might have got that letter from 6 years and got it and be like, oh man, F John, I don't care about, like, throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
But your intentions weren't that at all. You can't change. And I think a lot of us will hold on, whether you're on the good
Yeah.
end or bad end of a relationship or whatever, will hold on to those things for a long time, thinking that, and not even accepting the fact that you've changed. Why don't you think that they've changed?
Right. Like
um,
that's not an abstract thought of like time and thought processes changes people. A lot of
yeah,
times we're in the thick of the emotions of it. And we're in this heat of the battle. And you're like, yeah, sometimes we need time. Sometimes that time's a long time.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like building relationships back with my dad and with the rest of my family. It's like, yeah, yeah. Would it have been nice 5, 6 years? Yeah, that would have been nice. But the reason I'm reaching out, the reason I'm doing things is not for that kind of aspect. Like you said, we can't control how people react to situations. We can't control what happens to us. We can only control our reactions.
yeah,
And when we think about that and we live that out from both sides of it, of understanding, I can't change someone's mind.
yeah,
I can just love on them and just be true and authentic, not be a backstabber or doing all these things, but I
yep,
can be true and authentic. And if they receive it, fantastic. If they
yeah.
don't receive it, that's also fine. I'm not doing it for it.
Yeah, I've recently had wins where I've I've set boundaries for myself, but where I've had struggles is actually holding to those boundaries. Still
Mm.
kind of falling back into that old version that says like, well, okay, maybe it's different, or maybe,
Mm.
And recently, for sure, over the last year, I've really set in stone, like, this is what is unacceptable for me, and I created like a value structure for myself. And as recently as this week, I really stuck to that, and I told somebody no. And past me would have done everything to try to, and make it all better. And a good friend of mine was like, she, like, gut check, what did that feel like? And I was like, it felt freaking great. I
Yeah.
finally, like, had that release of like, no, 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 I am drawing a boundary for myself. And I don't think people understand the mental health that is involved in that. Like, it's really transformative. And in that whole thing of knowing what is acceptable for you. And it seems like, I don't know, I'm just going to keep browbeating you to write a book about this stuff, because it just seems like there's so many things that, uh, in hearing just this short conversation we're having of different aspects, I bet if you sat down and like just went on walks and voice recorded this of things, the book will emerge so quick that you're
Yeah.
going to be like, oh my God, like this is, it's all like here and here. And I'm curious to really hear, and I will check in, cause I'm not, I will do that.
Yep.
Is that, I'm curious to hear what you found about yourself
Mm.
in that thing. Whether, I don't know. I just always feel like what is the hardest part for us to uncover on our journey is what is actually waiting to get uncovered, because a lot of times we're afraid of it, because that unknown. And
Yeah.
you certainly aren't afraid of it, but I just curious if like if it's all there and it's just you're missing that last little weave to see what that thing was. And
Yeah.
yeah, but there's
That's a
definitely a
good
big story.
That's a good point. And it was one of my goals this year to write an outline for a book for this
Yeah,
idea of running with purpose and my life kind of in that general thing and the journey that I've gone through. But you bring up a really good point that I haven't really uncovered or thought about is, as we've been talking, right? It's how am I supporting other people?
hmm,
How have I helped other people get to this journey? And yes, I've learned things, I've grown as a person, but what has this journey really done for me overall? To your point is
right,
what's that last stroke of the pen to say like, no, this is the story. This is what's actually making the story. All of this is the buildup to what this thing is. I don't think I really thought about it in
yeah,
that way, but And I think that's what happens when we have this attitude of focusing on other people. We do forget to handle ourselves sometimes, right? The boundaries and things, because we can get into this people pleasing type of aspect, and not meaning to. We're trying to just be nice to people and
Yep.
care for people, but it can slowly turn into that. But I'm going to take that back, because I think that's a really good, it's a good way to frame it, to say, how did this all end up?
Right.
and I believe, just with my Christian faith, is I believe I've been put on this path, and I'm making these impact with these things that I'm doing. But again, it's hard when you take, I'm getting older. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
say I'm old. I still feel like I'm 10 years old, but it's, as you see time, like, there's only a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
And what am I using that time for? I think as we get older, it's a common adage, right? Is you start to really understand what's important.
Right.
You gain this perspective when you lose people, or situations happen. You really go like, hey, wait a second, this isn't important,
Mm-hmm.
or as important. And that's I do a word every year. My word this year is perspective, which I love that you brought this up without us even talking
Yeah.
about that, of this idea of framing things in relation to other things. So it's like, obviously, perspective, seeing other people's points of views, and understanding things, but also understanding the relative, the relation between the things, and what is actually more important than other things. Because if you are doing one thing, and I had an episode about this not too long ago, of faith, just in general, of having faith in something. If you have faith in something, that means you have not faith in the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't have both. So when you put faith in something, this is where you're putting your hope, trust, or whatever. That means you don't agree with the other part of it. But so often we want to have that one foot in, one foot out.
Yeah.
We'd be like, actually, I want this because I believe this is going to get me to where I want. However, I'm still stuck in this space, right? And we play this teeter tottering. So perspective it definitely resonated with me this year when I was writing my words. I was writing a bunch, and like perspective just kept coming up, or synonyms of perspective. I was like, all
Yeah.
right, that's the
That's it.
word. That's going to be the focus this year.
That's amazing. Yeah. It is absolutely a great way to wrap all this up for you. Like, cause it is that whole part of like understanding there is I don't know. I think I'm going to keep checking with you on this, because I will be as shocked if you tell me that there wasn't something that emerged out of this that you weren't expecting. Because I just, before we did this, I just did a solo one based on this idea that I've been struggling which is like, I had all these different awakenings happen in my life, right? A bunch of different ones that were not minor, they were huge, but I never ever embraced any of them, and it was like, one of the things I've been talking with my wife about is like, why did it take a brain tumor for me to finally understand myself?
Yeah.
Like, how could you go through all this other crap that would floor a lot of people, but somehow optimism always shined through? But it took a brain tumor that optimism still shined through, but it was where I finally put in perspective of, who am I and why am I put here to tell this story? Like, what
Mhm.
can I like? And it was like, my whole thing, kind of back to your point about like taking this and turning it to a positive, was like, I will be somebody that survives this, but this story will not be lost on me. I won't be somebody that just cowers. And so it took a long time for me to step back and go like, okay, I don't want to be cancer guy. So how do I frame this up so people can say it? And what emerged for me from that perspective of it was that I can do this by telling my story. I look at it, Wile E.
Yeah.
Coyote, right? His thing is to go after the roadrunner, right? And he falls off the cliff. But the next scene, he's right back to chasing the roadrunner.
Mm.
So if I can use my own story in that way, that, Jonathan can hear it and go, oh, wait, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Then you can take that perspective and run with it, and then go. And then when you feel like you're falling off the path again, go back and listen to some other stuff and see like, oh, wait a minute, I can relate to that. So it's been like, I always tell people I'm building a snowman, or I'm like, I want to create like horoscopes. It's like those things that are so relatable that you can go like, I see, versus, no, this is what you have to do. This is how
Yeah.
you get to enlightenment. This is how you get to da da da. That's all somebody else's opinion. Like it's,
Yeah.
but it does come down to perspective. It's somebody, and there is a beauty in that, the frame up of your story of like, giving somebody that frame of putting themselves in the shoes of that person you're running with. would
Mhm.
be kind of a cool way. Not to just throw a brainstorm idea out there for you, but
Frivolously taking notes for like, all right, we're gonna type this real quick. We got this thing down.
yeah.
You bring up a quick point though, is the idea of building these tools that we have, whether it's podcasts, writing, images, what have you, any creative aspect. We come from a similar vein of I'm not trying to be prescriptive.
Right.
I'm not telling you exactly what to do. Half the things that I talk about on my show are things that I struggle with. And I wanted to research it. I wanted to get some information down on it because I'm like, I need to figure this out too.
Right.
Who else is going through this? Like, and I want that to be the attitude, not the like, look at me, I got this thing taken care of. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't get anyone. No one learns that way.
Right. Right.
You can absorb it,
Yes.
but you're never going to actually put it in action because you're going to feel judgmental.
Yep.
You're going to feel judged by this. You're going to feel guilty when you don't meet these standards of things. It's like, no, just relate.
Yeah.
Just meet me as a person that's gone through a similar thing.
Yeah. That's fantastic, man. So before we wrap, I want to
Yeah.
hangry. Tell me about hangry. Tell people like you have bought a ton of food for people. So like fill us in, catch us up to date on like what's all going on with hangry.
Yeah, Hangry's, it's been interesting with all of the moves and stuff like that, but wearehangry.com is the website. Basically, the idea is we're angry for those living with the issue of hunger. So we're saying, hey, how can we support people and get around it? We have some partners in Florida. We got some partners in Hawaii now. We still have some in Ohio. We're hoping this spring, summer to really try to pick up some things in Chicago as well. But yeah, just our whole purpose is trying to give back to the community, working and supporting local food pantries that may not have the big budgets to take care of things. There was one in Minnesota that was fantastic in the like for what they did. We reached out to them like, hey, how can we support you? And then I look at their like annual report and their budget's like $2 million a year. I'm like, oh, so my $3,000 check's not going to make a difference. Okay, well then we'll find another place to go.
Yeah.
And it's like, great, you guys are doing amazing things. Nothing against you. I'm glad you could do that. But our whole purpose is really just meeting people where they're at. And we do it with food, and we try to do it in Chicago. We were going to do it this summer and just buy some pizza and just go to some of the places, the homeless or people that are just displaced. And I think a lot of times we overlook people and the circumstances. I think COVID really helped bring the light to it of just like, hey, some people are one paycheck away from not being able to feed their family. It's either put a roof over their head or feed them. That's it.
Yeah.
Food pantries were out the door with lines, or cars lined up for during COVID. And it was such a real thing for us to witness. And that's why we started Hangry from the Hangry Race series. And yeah, that's kind of our mission and dream and goal, is just to help those dealing with the issue of hunger. And unfortunately, now as COVID stuff is, the pandemic's kind of out of us and people don't think about it again. It's on the back burner, but we're still, we're still doing what we can. Every time we go to Florida, there's a food pantry down there in Dunedin, Florida. We shop their shelves and go, what do you need? And then we go to Walmart and we buy literally everything they have that they need.
Yeah.
Fun fact, you can only buy 299 separate items at Walmart before it has to be a separate transaction.
No kidding. Huh.
Yeah. So we've hit it multiple times. Like, it's not letting me scan it. I'm like, are we at 299? They're like, yeah. I'm like, we've been here before.
Oh, wow.
Start a new transaction.
That's unreal.
But, yeah. So that's really our drive and mission, is to really help people. And it's just Kayla and I. So we don't, not trying to make money off of this in a way. It's just everything goes out the door and what we do. So, and you were, I was very thankful to have you for the time that we did have you kind of supporting in some of your ideas and stuff like that helped kind of launch things at the beginning in COVID, when we were trying to figure out what any of this meant and how we do any of this thing. We were able to make some things happen. And it's been, we started in 2020. So a couple of years now for Hangry itself. Hangry Race Series started in 2016. So been doing it for a little while.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey guys, I know that I echo this back. So John's podcast is Run with Purpose. Both of us have a favor to ask of everybody. At least 2 people that need to hear this message, that knows 2 people. All we're asking you to do is just spread us to 2 people, and then that'll spread it to 2 people, and we'll start this wave. And this is how we start helping other people too. But the big thing I know that I'm going to echo back that John will agree with is just that, it is tough being alive, it's tough living as a human, and things go sideways, and your perspective is 100% one of the drivers in it. But what you'll find is there's a lot of people like Jonathan out there that are willing to help if you're willing to see them. there's no shame in asking for help when things are tough. There's no shame in understanding when other people are struggling, to see them and to stop and not fight that urge to put it off, but actually act on that urge. And you can really change lives. And this is how you start spreading hope and
Yeah.
finding your purpose. And just we'll have all of Jonathan's links into the show notes. Make sure you check out his podcast. I mean, you have 113, 114 episodes?
131 released
131.
yesterday, so.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like 131 episodes. Like, I think I was at
4
3
or 5.
Yeah, it
You
was
were
like really early on. Yeah.
Early.
What to do an update but yeah, it is an amazing show. He's doing really good stuff, and just go support him, follow him on Instagram, help out Hangry. But Jonathan, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the good you're doing in the world. You're doing an excellent job. I will check on you for that book, or whatever it turns into. That I am here to help you in any way I can. I got experience in all of that stuff. So I'm happy to help you navigate that world too. But just appreciate you, man. And world is definitely a better place with you in it. So thank you for sharing this space with me today.
Yeah, of course. And back at you, man. I appreciate everything you've done. Your motivation, we talked about it a little before. The positivity is definitely, there's times where I've just had enough with work stuff, or I've had whatever, and your damn videos pop up in my feed. It's like, damn algorithm, it just knows, right? And it's the positivity you shine, man. I appreciate everything you do.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. All right,
no problem.
Enjoy Chicago.
Thanks.
We'll see you.
Yeah.
Foxland Media. Think big.